Business today. It's time for us to take a look at our insights, and of course, we're going to be. I must say, just a reminder, it's still Women's Month, and of course, International Women's Day. The international theme was focusing on equality and innovating for a balance. Of course, hashtag being balance for better. With me here in studios, I have two lovely women who are going to be discussing a whole lot more there with us in the studios. Right next to me is Dr. Winifred Tirianyeva. Yes, and Tirianyeva Kiryabwiri. Is that how we should pronounce it?
Tirianyeva.
Okay, and she is the Financial Sector Deepening Uganda Board member. And of course, at the extreme end there is Rashmi Pillai, who is the Director of Programs Financial Sector Deepening Uganda. You're very welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I'm glad you've made time for us, because there's a lot of things that need to be discussed, especially how financial sector deepening does come in here in this picture particularly. But first off, when we talk financial sector deepening Uganda, what are we talking about?
Financial Sector Deepening Uganda is a Ugandan company. We are a not-for-profit dedicated towards the belief of universal financial inclusion. We believe in a responsible financial sector that meets the needs of everyone: women, youth, small businesses, refugees. And the way we achieve this is by working with the private sector and the public sector. So we work with regulators, better policies, more progressive ideas. We work with the private sector like banks, mobile network operators, fintechs, to see how we can push the frontier of financial service delivery.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So why are we looking at this particular hashtag, balance for better?
Okay, thank you. So, as you were aware, we just celebrated International Women's Day, and the theme for this year was balance for better. What does that mean? It means that a balanced world is better for everybody else. We are talking about issues of inclusion for both men and women. We are saying that we need equal participation of women. We need to reduce the gender gap in various areas. And if we do that, then we have more sustainable and inclusive development.
That is very true. So do we understand, when people talk about gender equality, is this something you feel that maybe we do understand as a whole?
I actually think in Uganda we understand the gender inclusion. But more broadly speaking, it is, if you're all familiar with the SDGs,
yes. And
SDG number 5 is on gender equality. We are talking about two things. One is inclusion and economic empowerment, but also eliminating violence against women. You're talking about empowerment in the political space. You're talking about economic opportunities for women. You're talking about access to health and better and services. So we have been at this in Uganda for a long time. You know issues of inclusion in the political space. We have this in our constitution. Affirmative action for women and girls in Uganda. We've been at it for a long time, so we understand this. It's just that later on we will talk about some of the issues that we need to talk about to get us where we need to be.
Yes, that is very true. But why does this actually matter to us if we're talking gender equality? Why is it this important?
It is important because in an environment where you have more opportunities for the boy child or for the males, then what we're actually seeing is that you cannot have sustained development. If you have women who do not have access to education, who are not economically empowered, then even at the family unit, you're going to have challenges because you cannot sustain that for a long time. If you have opportunities for both, if we talk about education, for both the girl child and the boy child, economic opportunities for the females and the males, then we think that we have a better society, a more empowered society, and we are both able to contribute to the development of the country. In fact, it is said that there is no country that can achieve its full potential without gender equality. If you don't get it right, then you'll always have problems. and hence the issue of sustainable development.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what are some of these challenges that you can identify and say, well, we still have this as a challenge?
So on the financial sector side, to Dr. Winnie's point, Uganda has made significant strides, positive strides. If you compare Uganda to other countries, overall when it comes to financial inclusion, there is no gender-based disparity between men and women, which is a big barrier in a lot of other countries. But if you dig a little deeper and look more closely, when it comes to formal financial services, there is a 9 percentage point gap between the adult women who use formal financial services and men. But what makes it even more interesting for Uganda is that because we have more women, we are a women-dominated country, in absolute numbers, more women are using financial accounts than men. But that said, women are 1.8 times more likely to use informal services. That is their first mode of preference. They save more, they take insurance services, they take credit, all via informal services. So the question then we should be asking ourselves is, are we not serving women the way they want to be served? Are their preferences not being taken into account? And should we rest on our laurels, or should we push ourselves further to deepen financial inclusion among women?
Okay, and that's why you came in and said, well, let us focus on the women.
Yes.
That's interesting. Okay, so what should be done really to close some of these gaps that we're seeing, Doctor?
So there are various things. First of all, you need to, let me just build on to Rashmi's point. We have a way of tracking financial inclusion, and this is through what we call the FinScope surveys. If you look at the 2009 FinScope survey, we had 30% of the population excluded, no access to financial services. If you looked at it in terms of men and women, we had more women excluded than the men. In 2013, we had another FinScope survey that showed a big drop in exclusion. In other words, we had made progress as a country because now you had 15% of the population that was not excluded. In 2018, we had another survey that showed 23% of women excluded, 22% of men excluded. 1 percentage gap, and you could say we're doing well. If you look at the drivers of inclusion, you'll find that we had more people excluded when we were driving inclusion through physical, if I may put it that way, in financial institutions, banks, brick and mortar institutions. From 2009-13, when we started to see the drop and an increase in exclusion, this was driven by the phone, mobile money, and technology, basically. Now, the data shows us that in terms of usage, you have fewer women able to use this, the key driver of inclusion, than men. Okay? And so then we start to ask the question, what do we need to do to try and bridge that gap? On one hand, it may need policy interventions. We go back and look at laws governing how we establish financial institutions, how we regulate financial institutions, how we regulate access. But on the other hand, it may be other things. Can we support product development? Can we support fintechs? Can we support financial institutions to develop products that serve the population better? At the end of the day, what is going to inform us is the data, is what we are picking up from the field, from these surveys. It should inform policy interventions, inform product development, and other interventions to try and bridge and narrow the gap.
Okay. So, Rashmi, the challenges you've hinted on, clearly that's why you said, well, let's try and focus on women to help out. But are we seeing the fact that probably women are intent on, because many people say, till today, women are still intent on being, in the shadows. They don't want to put themselves out there because, we have so many beliefs out there about what we are as women. So are we looking at the kind of information the women are getting? Are we looking at culture or, where we really come from at the end of the day?
That's such a great question, Rowena. So this is one of the questions we asked ourselves as FSDU. And the first point, it is easy to be seduced by stereotypes, by rhetoric that is prevalent with, and therefore at FSDU we said, let's begin, as Dr. Winnie said, with data. What does the data tell us? So we, in FinScope 2018, which collects data on adult men and adult women, what we realized is that while women are participating, one of the key drivers of why women are excluded is income generation, economic opportunity. 40% of the excluded women are less likely to have any income source, whereas only 20% of completely financially excluded men are dependent on someone for some kind of income source. That will determine how women participate in an economy, what kinds of financial services they adopt. Now, coming to your question of socio-economic and cultural norms, yes, they play a big role. For example, if you look at global statistics, including statistics from Uganda, women spend 2.6 times more time in unpaid domestic work or childcare, and compared to men. What that means is that women will actively choose what kind of economic opportunity to join based on balancing out personal challenges or domestic work. The second thing is capital raising for women. Do they have collateral in their name? Are they able to easily raise finances for a business? Makes a huge difference in terms of which business they will enter into and what their net take-home incomes will look like. So at FSDU, to round this out, one is we're going to very aggressively focus on collecting data, because what we cannot monitor, we cannot track. And second, we're trying to understand what are the socio-cultural norms that are relevant to Uganda, separate from the world, that impact women's financial inclusion.
Right. Are we seeing, because we're talking equality here as well, Doctor, are we seeing that this is something that's really coming to life? Away from policies and what the government has done, or what people are taking on, like you're taking on, when we come back to the people in our societies, do we understand or appreciate equality?
Yes, I think we actually do. Very much. And in Uganda, like I said earlier, we understand this. We, at least since this government, if there's one credit that we need to give to this government since it has been in power, women empowerment has been a key agenda of this government, affirmative action, so we understand. Some of the barriers that I experienced in other jurisdictions, we have crossed that a long time ago. So, but the issue is that there are certain things we need to tweak a little bit to try and get things right, because if we don't, then we are likely either to reverse the progress we have made or experience other challenges. But back to the issue of financial inclusion, we have seen that we have made progress. If, like I say, if you look at the data we have so far, the gap has been narrowing over the years. If you look at women and men who are able to save, not able to save actually, you find that, small percentage gap between men and women. Those who are not able to access credit from either formal or informal financial institutions, small gap. You'll have 52, 53, something like that. And so that tells us that overall we have a challenge. If we break it down, we may see some variation between men and women, but it gives us a lot of information to work with. And we say, where can we intervene on the policy front? Where can we intervene in terms of innovation, supporting innovation, and supporting other interventions that will help us to get to where we want.
Okay, but the policies are great?
Well, I wouldn't say they are great. We have an enabling environment. We have an enabling environment. We have issues that we need to address, okay? If I give you an example, in 2016, we had an amendment to the Financial Institution Act that allowed agency banking. Before that, people wanted to do it. Financial institutions wanted to do it. they could not do it. And sometimes, writing laws, amending laws takes long.
Yes,
okay?
it does.
So we had financial institutions, and what are we seeing after 2016 when we had that amendment? We are seeing that you don't need to walk a long distance to Stanbic Bank or Barclays. You can go to an agent closer to you. Okay? Now that helps both men and women, but as Rashmi said, women have certain specific barriers. They're at home, they are doing non-paid employment, and so if a financial institution is 10 kilometers away for both the man and the woman, the man may be able to go at a certain point during the day, but the woman may never be able to go. But if there is an agent, if the woman is able to access through technology, then you reduce those barriers.
Okay.
For
so what are some of these things you're looking at as a way, or a structure or form that you have to achieve this particular goal?
Sure. So as Dr. Winnie said, obviously this is not we have a long wish list, and then there's a shorter list of what you can achieve in the medium term. Right? So one, as Dr. Winnie said, is we're definitely looking at reducing technology-based barriers. So phone ownership, mobile money is very prevalent, but there is still a gap of around 10 percentage points between men and women of phone ownership. That determines how engaged you will be on mobile money. You can put your SIM as a woman in your husband's phone or in your son's phone, but you will do very limited transactions because that is not your own personal device. So as a policy or the private sector, we need to start talking about what are the incentives we can put in place for women's phone ownership. The second is there needs to be a greater recognition from the private sector that women are profitable. Having products and services that are agnostic, meaning that they, you say, oh, I've created an account or a product as a bank that could apply, and both men and women are welcome to use it. You may not realize, but it may actually exclude women or limit women's participation because of your go-to-market strategy, because of how you've distributed access points to reach women. Or the pricing of that product and services. So designing products and developing them that are inclusive for both men and women is very critical. And not thinking of it will inadvertently at some point create levels of exclusion. And that is something as FSDU that we are having a conversation with all our partners, with the private sector as well.
Interesting.
Let me talk about another policy intervention that we would like to address. If you're going to open an account with a formal financial institution, they're going to require some information from you, ID, proof of address, and we have national ID now in place, but before we had it in place, you had challenges for both men and women in terms of being able to provide in the technical terms we talk about KYC or whatever identification documents that the financial institutions require. Now we are beginning to talk with various stakeholders and talk about the issue of tiered KYC. And say, if you're going to a bank, what is the information that the bank requires? And if you're going to a SACCO, or it is actually now transacting on a phone, do you need to provide the same information that the bank requires? Can we have different levels of KYC so that we make it easy for people to actually open accounts and transact with these institutions? The other interesting thing we want to be able to do, we're saying, now that we have NERA that was established and has a lot of information about all of us, banks, can we establish a system where actually these government institutions talk to each other so that the minute I get an ID and I go and present my ID at one institution, you simply put in a number and somebody is able to say, yes, this is Winnie, this is their ID, and you don't have to go and produce the same information all over wherever you're going, okay? And some of these things you might think that they are obvious, but yes, getting the various institutions to talk to each other and transmit this information. If a woman is able to register your business. If you go and register your business and incorporate it with the Uganda Registration Services Bureau, if you go to another agency, somebody should just simply punch in a number and say, yes, we can tell, this is X Limited, it was incorporated on this day, these are the directors, these are the shareholders, and that should make doing business easy,
which is not the case,
Yeah.
really. So, ladies, I'm going to ask each of you to give us your final word or recommendation in regards to this particular discussion of women and how we can get them involved, as financial sector depend.
Good. So, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the time you have given us here. As Rashmi said, and perhaps I've also said at some point, FSD Uganda has been around for a while now. We are supported by DFID and Bill and Melinda Gates. Our key objective is to drive financial inclusion. We are keen to work with various stakeholders in the economy, policy institutions, financial institutions, innovators, research institutions to try and make sure that we get it right. Yeah.
Thank you, Roanna. So just as a parting word and adding to Dr. Winnie, FSDU believes in a gender-balanced world. We believe the economic and social and cultural outcomes of a balanced world will have a multiplier effect in contributing to a more sustainable outcomes in the long run. So as FSDU, we will be focused on reducing the formal sector gender gap. We will be focused on ensuring informal and formal services deepen and serve women better in a fashion that allows them to be more participatory in the economy.
Okay, so ladies, I'm going to apologize for this one because when you talked about the formal and informal, I remembered something. We've always had discussions about equality in workplaces. I don't know if that has, gone passed by you a couple of times, but this seems to be where we're thinking women are actually getting empowered, but we still get such kind of complaints. Do you have any remarks on that quickly before we sign out?
So it's first of all, it's not an issue for Uganda only. It's a global issue. Barriers to growth, to opportunities, and there are various people that track this to try and say what can we put in place, what measures can we put in place to ensure that women are treated fairly at the workplace and have equal opportunities. Sometimes it's about lack of awareness. Sometimes it is about an individual identifying those specific things that may hold you back. Is it skill? First of all, we must understand that we must have the necessary skill to be able to compete with the men. But having had the skill, what are the issues that prevent us from progressing? And these issues are known. What we just need to do is to ensure that we address them.
Okay.
You've opened a Pandora's box. Yes, this is a global issue. There are systemic barriers to how women are treated globally differently than men, right from how they are being invested in terms of education, if it comes to a male child versus a girl child. Whether will you invest in college education for your girl child versus a male child? That determines the level of confidence she has, the exposure she has, and even the agency women have in terms of demanding for their rights at a workplace, demanding for equal pay for equal work, or even organizations that proactively learn and realize that having gender balanced boards and women in leaderships position creates more better outcomes for the organization. And there is enough and more evidence to prove all of these things, but these are long-term barriers that we will have to fight against.
That is indeed very true. Thank you so much, ladies. Right next to me here is Dr. Winifred Talinyeba, right? Talinyeba Kiryawiri. Is that
yes,
correct? Indeed. And she's the Financial Sector Deepening Uganda board member. And at the extreme end there is Rashmi Pillai, who is the Director of Programs from Financial Sector Deepening Uganda. Now, of course, this is something that we need to keep talking about, especially, of course, the issue of financial sector deepening in itself, as you're very, very involved in trying to make sure that this financial inclusion is really dealt with. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. UBC TV Inspiring Uganda Business Today. My name is Rowena Kajumba. From me and the entire team, have yourselves a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.